Microsoft PowerPoint 2007, Creating and Editing Text. We know that PowerPoint is a very visual medium. I mean, come on, we're all using it. That's why we're taking this CBT Nugget video series to learn how to make it even better. But understand something. At some point, you're probably going to want to put a bullet or a title on your slides, and that's going to require some sort of text box. Most of the time, you are going to be putting some sort of text on your slides in your PowerPoint presentation. So we're going to take a look at how you can enter text into pre-built fields that show up on certain slides. So if you add a title slide, they've already got some pre-built fields that you can fill in. We'll also take a look at how you can create text boxes from scratch. Let's say you want to add some text on a location on your slide that doesn't have a pre-built field. Not a problem. We're on your blank slide that you're creating from scratch. Then we're going to take a look at how we edit and maneuver the text. Yeah, you can do just about anything that you did with text on a word processor, you can do on your screen and on your slides here in PowerPoint 2007. So let's first off go to Start and open up our Microsoft Office PowerPoint 2007, and it'll open up with our defaults in place, which is going to be the Office theme, a slide that's in our presentation right here, as well as the blank information. Now, this is all about text, right? And the nice thing is that with any PowerPoint presentation, they're going to assume that you're going to start off your presentation with some sort of title slide. You know, it's the first slide that shows up at the beginning of your presentation. And that's a fair estimate and a fair guess that they could make. And so they pre-populate in most of the themes and the designs and the layout here with the title slide. It's the first slide that you see here, and it's going to have a title field and a subtitle field. Now, when I say field, what I'm talking about is a pre-populated, pre-set up text box. Notice the little lines right here. Notice the lines down here. Now, of course, we're going to see a little bit later how we don't have to use the pre-built themes and design layouts. We can actually add text boxes just about anywhere. But in this case, because it's a title slide, it's going to have a title and then have a subtitle. Now, if I add a new slide, now you notice here, if I just click on the new slide, it's going to, by default, add what we call the title and text content slide, which means you've got the title up here of the slide and a click to add text along with the ability to add and insert content within it. This is by default based again upon the Office theme that they just put out there. There are different types, and this is going a little bit beyond of what we're going to show here, but I don't want you to get confused about, well, what do you mean? Why does this look different? This one is blank, but then if you click here, you see some of the differences. That's because there's nothing on there right now. Here, if you notice, you can see the layout, where you can change the layout of the selected slide. If I click the down arrow, see, here's our title slide. Here's our title and content. We can do a section header. You can do two pieces of content. You can do a title only. You can do a picture with a caption, a content with caption. You can do many different things here just based upon what it is that you're trying to do. And this is all based on the Office theme. When we get to a later CBT Nugget, we'll talk about how you can change these themes and even add your own themes. It's going to be kind of fun. So in this case, I can change how I want things to appear on the individual slides. But just notice that these are pre-populated with some content. So I'm going to add one of these, and then I'm going to go ahead and add another slide. Now I can choose to add a different slide by clicking the down arrow instead of just the default, which will give you the title and content. I'm going to go ahead and say I want one that's blank. So now what I've got is I've got a title slide, I've got just a standard content with title, and then I've got a blank slide. So let's start off and show you how we add text by merely utilizing the pre-existing fields or the text fields that are here. In this case, this is the title slide, right? And let's say I'm going to do a PowerPoint presentation on my Acme instruments, and I'm going to call it Powerful Instruments. Now when I do this, it's going to automatically, you notice, it now shows you the outline of the text field, the pre-built text field. And when I click off of it, it disappears. And you think, well, wait a minute, where did it go? Is it still there? Absolutely. Notice when I roll my mouse, first it's going to hit the edge. That's your position. See the little arrows? If I click there, it's going to allow me to then move and maneuver and position this particular text field. If I roll over it until I get within it, you'll notice it changes to my cursor. And so now I can, place it anywhere in here and start editing the text. And you'll notice that just like anything else, I can use my text editing capabilities. I can hit the backspace and type something in. I can click over here and decide I want to use my arrow keys like I'm doing. That's set. If I wanted to, I could hit a return here, and that would move it up and do a carriage return. So this is pretty much the same thing that you could experience if you're using like Microsoft Word 2007 or another word processor. You still have that capability. You can highlight something, and you can even manipulate the text and say, well, I want to edit what text I'm using and some things like that. We'll show you that here in a second. And I can even use the backspace key and bring that, or I can come over here and select and hit delete, and it'll take away one of the letters or characters. So I still have those capabilities within the text box. Pretty simple, right? Now, once I click away from that, you'll notice I still have another field. So let's say for powerful instruments, I want to come down here and I want to put low brass instruments. Now, when I do this and I click away, you'll notice that based upon the theme that I have, this Office theme, I have colors. So my titles will be the Calibri headings, and then for the Calibri body, it will be 32, it will be a gray looking, and it'll be centered, and so with a shadow, drop shadow put on it. So this is just standard, the way that they are set up for the theme. Now, of course, can I edit this? Absolutely. If I highlight all this and come up here and say, well, I want a different font. So I click on the down arrow, and again, your mileage may vary, showing you what type of font you have. But notice something that's kind of cool. See over here? We've shown you this in the other CBT Nugget series on Office 2007. This is called Auto Preview. Look over here. As soon as I select something, it gives you a show of what it's going to look like. So that's kind of cool. You can say, oh, wow, this is what the font's going to look. Now, your fonts may vary. You might not have as many as I have that are installed. So let's go down to one that everybody seems to have, and that is Tahoma. So let me go down to T here, and there's Tahoma. That's a pretty standard one. So I select Tahoma. So I've got a 32 font size with Tahoma, and I want to change the color to maybe just regular standard black. Okay, that looks good. And then, of course, if I want to, I can highlight this and say, well, I want it bolded, and I want it italicized. And then I want to highlight this, and I want to remove instruments, because that's kind of silly to say powerful instruments and then low brass instruments. So I hit delete. See? It's that simple. So this is how we can manipulate text within a pre-built text box field. So we say powerful instruments, low brass, that looks good. Now, you might say to yourself, well, Chris, this is, that's all well and good, but what if it's a different type of environment? Well, let's go ahead and click on the next one. So we'll come over here. Notice we have a title. Again, if you select on it and click in it, it will then allow you to go ahead and just start typing. It's like, hey, go ahead and start typing. So we can say low brass and then put tubas. So that way we know they're talking about the tubas. Now watch what happens. Now when I deselect off of it, it now shows you that as the slide title. And if I click in here, watch what happens. It automatically says, oh, you want to use bulleted text. I mean, think about this. In a later CBT Nugget video in this series, I'll talk about how to do really good quality presentations and what to avoid. And one of them is called death by bullets. In other words, you can bullet people to death, just like a machine gun. If you got 20 bullets on the screen and they can't barely read the text, it's not helping you. But in this case, by default, they figure you're going to be doing your presentation, you're going to be talking, so you just want bullets. So I start typing. So I might say, tubas are a great instrument, there we go. And then when I hit return, notice because it's following the standard bulleted behavior, it's going to create the next bullet point and say, go ahead and type the next one. So I can say something like, tubas can also be called B-flat euphoniums. So we might say something like that. Oh, and I've got a spelling error, so I'm going to put a B-flat there. So we got tubas can also be called B-flat euphoniums. So now what I've done is I've literally come in and I've created the bullets. Now, if I want to get rid of the bullets, what do I need to do? Well, again, if you notice, the bullets are highlighted. If I select the text and use this and say, well, I don't want any bullets, it'll show you that you can take away the bullets. Or I can change the different types of bullets that are there. So if I want to, I can then change the text. And now the bullets are the little arrows. So you can see rather quickly, this is how we go in, and this is how we create the text within the pre-built fields. Whether it's over here, let me click on this, whether it's here on our title slide, where I can click in here, and again, I can adjust anything within those, or if it's on a content title slide. So you can have your title of the content and then put some bullets in here. You can add pictures, as we'll show you, and graphs and other content on your slide as necessary. But the next thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to come over here and we're going to want to add a text box on something that's blank. So when I click over here, you'll notice that, guess what? No, notice I don't have any pre-built fields. There's nowhere, I can click in here all day long and I'm not going to be able to type text. That's where we need to insert a text box. Now, in order to put a text box onto our blank, we are going to need to go over to the Insert tab on our Office ribbon, and then you'll notice that we have a lot of different things that we can add. Tables, pictures, clip art, photos. We'll talk all about these kind of things when we get a little bit deeper into our adding content. But over here you can see that we have our text box. Now, this is a rather simple thing. Once you click on Add a Text Box, you can go ahead and take this. You'll also notice that it said we could add it to a shape. So if I have a shape like a circle and some other things, you can then add text to those shapes. Kind of fun. So in this case, though, notice I roll my mouse down over the slide itself, and it changes down to what looks like a little upside down cross here. And really what this is it represents a cursor. Right? A text cursor. You know, the blinking text cursor that you would see on Word or somewhere else. And so what you do is you simply, once I find where I want to place this text box, now don't worry, if you just place it somewhere, you can always maneuver it, and we'll show you how to do that. So I click and I hold, and notice it changes to a crosshairs, which allows me, and if I click and hold down my mouse, that's what I'm doing right here, you can set the size of the text box. Now I'm going to show you something. I can say it's going to be this deep, but it's going to default only to the width on the horizontal. What do you mean by that? Well, if I do this much, you'll notice that up here, going across the horizontal, I'm setting the width. The horizontal or the vertical up and down will be set by how much text I type in. It automatically word wraps. So what I'm going to do is show you that even though I'm going like about this far across and I go all the way down, watch what happens. It automatically just says, okay, one line of text this far across, but then as I type, it will continue to go down. And you can resize it, so if you make some changes or you turn the word wrapping off and some other things. But just understand, that's why it does that. If you go, wait a minute, Chris, I went ahead and I created this big text box. Why is it doing this? Don't worry about it. It will allow you to take that text, but it will stay within the horizontal or the width that you have set. You can change it, of course, in a little bit. So let's say we want to type something about tubas. We can say tubas are a fascinating instrument. Most people who are intelligent will play them. Now what I did was I just showed you something. Notice it went across the top, and then when it hit the end, it automatically did a word wrap. So that's great, right? That means that I can go ahead and add more content, and this will automatically change the size vertically for that particular text block. Think about it this way. You're kind of creating this text block that you're going to place upon your presentation that you can then maneuver around and show to everybody. So in this case, we can also say, it has also been found that good-looking people play this incredible instrument. You'll see that every single time that I reach the end, it automatically does a word wrap. Now watch this. Now if I click off of it, again, you don't see the text box. The only way that you could see the text box is if you decide to add a border to the text box, which of course you can do by merely right-clicking, and then you can say, well, do you want to set the format, the shape, size, and position? So what you would do is you would actually say, well, I want to format this and I want to add lines. You can do that also up here and change the colors and do some other things. But in this case, what you can do is just say, all right, I want to go ahead and I want to change the size. I want to make the text box not so wide. I want to make it almost like a column. So I can take my mouse and scroll over right here. I can take it, and then if I move it like this, watch what happens. it changes the carriage return because you're saying this is the boundary of my text, so now it drops it even more. So if I move it in a little bit more, it'll drop the vertical down because it is doing word wrap. Now, of course, the same thing holds true if I expand it. It will then expand and bring up the text box to meet where the end of the text is. Now, you'll also notice something kind of cool is when I roll my mouse over it, it changes to the 4 arrows. And I click and hold, what this allows me to do is look at this. I can move the text box to different places on my slide. Now, this would be good if I had a picture right here, and we'll see that when I insert pictures. I might have a photo of a tuba right here. Well, obviously, I don't want this sitting right on top of the tuba, but I can go ahead and come down and move it over here, or maybe I'll move it down here, and I've got a picture over here. It's merely taking the mouse, clicking and holding, and I can move it anywhere here on the slide. Now, that's kind of fun. We can do that. Now, where it really gets nifty, you'll notice that I have this little green anchor, and when I roll over it, it shows like an arrow that's kind of going in a circle. What does this do? This allows me to align my text box in any position I want to. I can maneuver it 360 degrees around the axis. Well, what does that mean? Let me show you. I click and hold, and as I move my mouse, look what happens. It's moving the text box, so now it goes up and down like this. Now, people might say, well, why would you want to do that? Well, I don't know. It's your presentation, but you might want to maybe put a big, huge tuba right across the top. And, people can read that if they want to. Or maybe you want to, kind of showcase what it looks like, if you're in Australia, because everyone knows they're on the, they're down under. And so people in Australia would read this right side up. I'm only joking, by the way. They wouldn't read it would still be upside down for them. But you can see you can do upside down text. You can change and manipulate the direction of the text and how people view it by simply grabbing the anchor and then rotating it to the appropriate position. Maybe you want to just kind of, make it a little askew. That's a nice big word to say it's kind of off. So you kind of turn your head and kind of read it like that. Again, your mileage may vary depending on how design friendly you want it to be, or maybe you want to make a point of like, hey, tubas are falling off the cliff, and so you'd show the text kind of sliding down, or you're showing somebody going down a ramp. I mean, you can use text in any way that you want to, and we'll show you how with word art you can even, in a later CBT Nugget, how you can take it to the next level. It's pretty cool. So now what we've shown you is essentially ways for you to create text, edit text, and maneuver text here on the screen. Now, to finish up, we do want to show you that the editing of the text that you have here is pretty much the same as anything else. We've kind of showed you how you can highlight things and change. But some of the other things you might want to consider, especially with text on a slide, is some of the effects that you can do, including adding a text shadow, which will help it stand out on the slide. Now, when I do this on a black and white, which is a pretty boring slide, it doesn't, you can kind of see what it looks like here just a little bit. But if I go ahead and change the background of the slide, and I do this by going to Design and change maybe the background of the slide to the music history theme. Remember, I've got all my music history and some of the themes that I use in my office that I did in my Word 2007. The neat thing is all of your Office products, so if you've watched that CBT Nugget series, will utilize the same Office-built themes that I've saved. So I can say, hey, I kind of like this one. So I click on that, and now notice it will then change the theme. We'll talk a little bit more, but notice how the drop shadow now adds a little bit more feeling to it. Now if I select this and say back here on my home page, I want to take off the drop shadow, it doesn't look all that well. And so that's one little tip for text boxes that you might want to do. You go ahead and do that. Now, by the way, you'll notice that because this is an Office 2003, remember, I have my floating toolbar that I can use and say, well, hey, I want to add certain things. Notice that the drop shadow is not part of your floating toolbar. You have to come up over here and add it right there. Another thing you can do with your text boxes is you can change them because they are shapes. They're basically shapes, blank shapes, that you've added text to. All I need to do is change the shape by clicking here, and you can insert the ready-made shapes and do some things here. And you can even come up here and change the shape fill, or you can change the outline, the width, or you can add 3D effects to the shape. So if I come in here on my text box, and remember, a text box is pretty much a shape with text on it, you can come over here and say, well, we can use different theme colors, and it's going to add an outline around it. Now, of course, you got red, you got your standard theme colors that you have up here in your standard colors. So if I want to say, well, I kind of like this red right here. So I go ahead and click on red. Well, now you'll notice it has a red box that surrounds the text box. So this way you can kind of identify what the text box looks like. Just some of the ways that we can, again, take a look at and modify text within a text box. You'll notice that by changing the theme, though, when I come over here, then again, the text has now changed to the white to appear on the blue background. But if I want to make any changes, again, I can just go ahead and I want to add the drop shadow to this as well. Looks good. Add a drop shadow here. I highlight it. Click on there. And again, you can see how, again, I'm just clicking within the text boxes and I'm manipulating it by, highlighting or whatever I'm doing here, and then adding something or, changing whatever the effect is on that and say, well, I want another effect there. In fact, on this, I want to change the color of that. And we're going to change it now to something that's a little bit more, that looks good, nice orange, low brass. There we go. So we can do different things with our text within these text boxes. And understand, you might have a whole PowerPoint presentation with no text at all, just pictures and photos. Hey, that might work, but if you are going to add text, this is how you do it. You use the pre-built fields, or you can add a text box and then adjust, edit, maneuver, change the text any way you want. Some really basic information, but yet very important information in this CBT nugget. First off, we might want to have text on our slides. So we need to know, number one, how we can enter the text in the fields that are already pre-populated on certain slides, like title slides or content title slides. We also saw how easy it is to insert a text box and create it whatever size and shape we want. Then we said, hey, what if we want to change what the text looks like? The direction of the text, move where it is on the slide. Easily done with a click and drag of the mouse. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.